Hello, and welcome to US History and Elections. Today we're going to be having a quick rundown of all the VP candidates that Kamala Harris could be picking as her Democratic running mate. I'm going to be looking at the three main options that start to appear. There are two main options that every single news outlet has pretty much talked about in depth as the serious two frontrunners. Then we're going to be looking at a few other key frontrunners, but not as high as the two elite picks. And then we're going to be running through a few other names I think are quite important to keep an eye on if something does happen. And whilst those would be surprises, anything can happen. It is Kamala's choice at the end of the day. But it is really important because only about a week and a half ago we thought that Joe Biden was going to be the Democratic nominee, and all of a sudden the Democratic convention campaign has been turned on its head, and now the Democrats are scrambling to choose the correct running mate that they believe will give them the best chance to win the swing states that will decide the election. So we're going to be, first of all, going on to this Forbes article, and it essentially just gives a list of the main names that everyone has mentioned. Roy Cooper, Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly, Gretchen Whitmer, Tim Walz, Andy Bashir, and there's a few other names down here, but let's be honest, pretty much all of these I'm not going to go into too much detail on because they're very unlikely to be chosen, because it is clear that the Harris campaign has shown that they want to choose a white man from the Midwest or any other Republican slash swing state, and that is what they're going to be focusing on. And at the end of the day, they are probably going to be choosing one of those sort of candidates. Now, the Washington Post has come out today, yesterday even, and said that the three main candidates, in their opinion, that Harris's campaign has earmarked as their top candidates is Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, Mark Kelly, senator of Arizona, and Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina. Now, it's important to mention that Tim Walz has also been topped as an upcoming candidate when the Veep stakes started about a week and a half ago. Tim Walz was not there, but we will have a quick look into him. And I just want to quickly go into the betting markets just to show that Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly pretty much have a 32% chance as the betting markets. And at the end of the day, the betting markets do tend to know a bit better than even polling data or internal polling from Democrats, who they believe is their best choice. But it shows that Josh Shapiro and Kelly are the two favourites in the race. I will look quickly into them. Tim Walz and Roy Cooper joint second, then Pete Buttigieg and Andy Bashir are third, roughly. And then below that, we'll have a few other names that we look at, but essentially it's probably going to be one of these six white men. So we're going to first of all be looking at what is currently seen as the main candidate, though him and Mark Kelly are very close, Josh Shapiro, the current governor of Pennsylvania. He won in 2022. He beat Doug Mastriano. Here it is. I know that's the primary. Doug Mastriano handily in a swing state by 15 points. Doug Mastriano obviously was a very poor candidate for the Republicans to choose, and especially in the 2022 environment, he performed just as badly as all the other strongly Trump candidates in that cycle. But what is really important about Shapiro is that he is insanely popular in Pennsylvania. He won with a large margin in 2022, and he still has a huge mandate from the people. He has a popularity rating of about 20 points in a swing state, which shows he is clearly doing a popular job for the people of Pennsylvania. But there are a few downsides to him. If the Harris campaign is going to consider him, they're going to consider that he is Jewish. And they could see that as a advantage usually, but considering the environment and a lot of their more left-wing supporters from the Democratic Party have voiced very, very clear concerns about the Democratic Party's policy towards the Israel and Gaza war. Choosing the Democratic VP as a clear defender of Israel and a Jewish candidate at that would be a risky pick, to say the least. They could do it, but they will definitely be thinking that. And there's also concern on some of his policies to do with public education. He is out of step with the Democratic Party consensus on that. But his positives are that he is a very, very popular incumbent governor in a Midwest who just recently won a election by a huge margin. He is a very good orator. People have compared him to the way that Obama speaks, and he is the sort of candidate they are almost dreaming of. If the internal data and internal reports coming from the Harris campaign are to be believed, then he is a solid candidate for the profile that they are looking for. Another solid candidate would be incumbent senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly. So he won a special election, I believe, filling in from John McCain's empty seat after he passed away. Actually, a special election that was held because of the what was it, Martha McSally? Yep, Martha McSally. She filled John McCain's empty seat, and then he won the special election to fill that seat, and then he won re-election in last year's general election against Blake Masters, quite comfortably. And Arizona was a very, very tight state for Joe Biden back in 2020, but he has won 2 elections fairly comfortably by about roughly 4 or 5 points in 2020 and in 2022. And more importantly, his popularity is very high in a swing state. He is considered a national hero for being an acclaimed astronaut, and he has a clear anti-gun. And he, well, as it says here, he used to run, and do believe he still runs, the Giffords campaign. That is his wife. She was the Congresswoman, Gary Giffords. She was a victim of political violence. She was shot. She survived, but he is a clear defendant for strong gun laws and regulations across the country. And the problem with Mark Kelly for the Harris campaign is that he only recently entered politics. He's only been a senator for not even 4 years now, and therefore he is inexperienced. And on top of that, if they do take out a popular incumbent senator in a very, very difficult state to win another Senate race, even though the Democrats do hold the governorship in the state at the moment, there will be a special election, and it could be a risk taking such a popular senator out of the Senate that the Republicans could win this Senate seat. But again, a great profile for what the Harris campaign is looking for, and him and Josh Shapiro are going to be the 2 main frontrunners, and I believe they will probably choose one of those 2. Maybe it may not be the best choice because of the negatives I did say, but I do believe at the end of the day, Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro is going to be Kamala Harris's running mate. But there are some other names. Roy Cooper, he is the incumbent North Carolina governor. He he won his general election in 2020. Let me just go down. He beat Dan Forest fairly comfortably, 3.5 points. It was close, but not that close for a swing state that has been incredibly close in recent elections at the presidential level. And he has clearly earned himself a reputation as being someone who's going after the Republican-led General Assembly in the state. And he has pushed for democratic principles in a state that is pretty much a red state. Only voted for Obama once back in 2008, voted for Republican ever since then, even though it has always been close. And if the Democrats want a tilt red state governor who is fairly popular, there has been some controversy. I remember there was a blackface controversy that he was subject to. I don't believe it was as long ago as his election, but a few years ago now. But other than that, he is a fairly popular governor. And if they want that sort of profile of candidate, then he is a strong, strong choice. But of course, his national profile is not as big. He is not as great an orator as maybe Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro. Of course, Mark Kelly has the added benefit of being an astronaut and a genuinely well-respected person. Roy Cooper is not that well known outside of the state and the surrounding region. Same with Tim Walz. He is the incumbent governor of Minnesota, and his veep stakes have risen pretty clearly in the last few days. He is now being considered as a genuine candidate by Harris internal reports that have come out. And he used to be the congressman for Minnesota's 1st, which is a largely rural working class district. that voted for Trump in 2016. He barely held on, as you can see, 50.3% of the vote he won, and then he ran for governor, and he won fairly clearly. I believe this was 2022, won by about 8 points, and previous to that, he won by 9 points. So he won in Minnesota, which is a lean Democrat state, but he won fairly comfortably in both those elections. And as much as he may look a bit older than he is pretty much the same age as Kamala Harris, and I think it's a good choice. I think it's a good choice. The Democrats will be looking at him, but again, he does not have the name recognition. He is a fairly bland character. He's a very safe choice if they were going to go there. And realistically, Minnesota is not one of the states that is a serious risk of the Democrats losing this presidential cycle. There's been polling that's shown it could be close there, but the polling has started to gone back in favor of the Democrats in the last week since Kamala Harris has been on the top of the ticket. But him and Roy Cooper are two rising stars, I'd say, in the Veep stakes, considering their names are not that prominent when Kamala Harris first was announced, or first pretty much got the endorsement from Joe Biden. But they are names to keep an eye on. Same with these other names that have fallen since the initial Veep stakes began a week and a half ago. Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky, you probably heard a lot about him if you've been following the Veep stakes. Of course, Kentucky is seen as a deep red state, but he has won multiple elections. He won the Attorney General election by probably the tightest margin you can win an election by, but a win's a win for his thing. And then 2019 governor race, he won by 1.1%. And then he increased that up to almost 5% last year. That was the biggest election of the 2023 election cycle. But that means he is now term limited. There is no risk of taking him out. The lieutenant governor would become the governor of Kentucky. The lieutenant governor is also a Democrat because that's how it works in that state. And arguably there is no risk for that. But of course, the Kentucky is not going to go blue in the presidential election, no matter how popular Andy Beshear is, and he is a respectably popular governor in his own state. But the problem is with Beshear is that he doesn't represent a state that is a clearly targeted one, such as Minnesota, which has a risk of turning red, but highly unlikely. North Carolina, a target for Democrats. Pennsylvania, a target for Democrats. Arizona, a target for Democrats. All the other more prominent candidates come from those states and could make a good case for genuinely pushing the Democratic ticket's chances in those states. Andy Beshear simply cannot do that because Kentucky is not a competitive state at presidential level. But he is still a good choice if they are looking for the profile of the white Midwestern man. And this is where Pete Buttigieg has also come in. Now, he became famous for his 2020 presidential campaign where he won the Iowa primary, came a close second in New Hampshire, and then he dropped out after his polling numbers fell off, endorsed Joe Biden, and then became Secretary of Transportation. And he's had a few difficult moments during his stint as the Secretary of Transportation, such as the train derailment in East Palestine and the Baltimore Bridge collapse. But his popularity has largely stayed the same. Of course, he is not an elected politician. He used to be when he was the mayor of a city in Indiana, but he is no longer that. And his name has always been there, but as I showed you in the poly market previously, he is about 5%. So clearly they do not think that him being from Indiana, as I said, Indiana, if you know, is not a competitive state this presidential election. Therefore, he will not be able to try and swing that state to go to vote for the Democratic ticket. And for that reason, his name has pretty much been there, but it's not being seriously considered. Though I do believe if the Harris ticket did win the presidential election, he would be receiving a big promotion. I think he'd be looking at a very good position in the cabinet. Now, Gretchen Whitmer, a very famous name in American politics recently, but again, the problem with her is that simply, to put it simply, the profile that Kamala Harris wants to balance the ticket is a straight white man, and Gretchen Whitmer is not a man. She may tick the other boxes, a popular incumbent governor in her home state, a Midwest state, and a swing state at that of Michigan. But simply, this is not what the Harris campaign is looking for. And I think she'd be a very good VP pick, possibly if Joe Biden was still running, but Joe Biden is not still running, and Kamala Harris was already the VP. So I think back in 2020, she had a good chance of being selected, but uh, her, her name recognition has only grown since then. But as Harris's VP pick, I would highly doubt that she chooses another woman. Same with Gina Raimondo, who is another candidate that has had a few mentions here and there, but is a very, very low key candidate. She's the incumbent Secretary of Commerce, previous governor of Rhode Island, a solid blue state. And for the reasons I've already said about a non competitive presidential state and being a woman, which does not match the profile that the Harris campaign wants, I would pretty much count her out. Though an interesting candidate that some people mentioned is William H. McRaven, retired four-star Navy admiral, and more importantly, he was in command of the operations to eliminate Osama bin Laden. And more importantly, more recently, he was very, very critical of President Trump. He was critical of the way that he removed security clearances for, I believe it was the director, it will say on this page, the CIA director, John O'Brien. He was very critical of Trump's revocal of the security clearance there. And therefore, he has cemented himself as being a critic to Donald Trump, even though he's never really been a Democrat as per se. And he's also been Chancellor of the University of Texas system. So he has some executive experience in that case. But like I said, if they want to do that, if the Harris campaign is going to choose, a popular, national hero, they will choose Mark Kelly, who has the experience of being an elected politician and one in a swing state. William McRaven does not meet those two categories. So, just to recap, as you see here, the chance has gone up slightly for Shapiro, but it might go up slightly for Kelly. This is a pretty fluid thing, but it gives us a rough standpoint. More importantly, I think this will come down to either Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, or Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. It is too early to say. It is too early to say. I think there's going to be some more polling that the Democratic Party are going to do, but I believe it will be one of these people. For the reasons I've already mentioned. And I think they will definitely bolster the Harris ticket, especially for their respective states, Pennsylvania for Shapiro or Arizona for Kelly. And of course, if you are Harris and you are thinking of which one is a stronger candidate, there are negatives to either of them. Kelly, unexperienced, a risk of taking him out of the Senate. Shapiro, the uncertainty of what a Jewish candidate could do with the backlash to the Democrats' handling of the Israel-Gaza situation. But at the end of the day, Kamala Harris would have the final say. She will be doing a lot of vetting of both of these candidates to see if there is any weaknesses that will come out. But this is essentially an overview of the candidates. I'm not going to go out and say which one I would choose. I think it's a bit too early for that. I think closer towards the middle of the early mid-August, when they will be choosing their candidates, I'm going to be doing another video and how the selected candidate is going to be able to bolster the Harris campaign. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe for more content relating to the upcoming elections, and I'll see you soon.